It's Paul Whitaker. I'm at the County Ground in Derby. It's the 25th of January 2018, and I'm talking to
Tony Palladino.
Right, thanks, Tony. We'll have a chat now. What I'd like to ask you about is the skills of bowling. When I played fairly low level club cricket, I could make the ball swing away, but I couldn't make it do anything else. And I'm always fascinated by the skills of professional players that can make the ball do different things deliberately.
I mean, I think first of all, when I was younger, I kind of just watched coaching videos and things like that, and spoke to people who played cricket, and I think I learnt pretty quickly that my stop ball was an outswinger. So I kind of that came quite naturally to me. I know Jimmy Anderson's a bit different, but my stop ball comes off my middle finger. So as I release the ball, this finger is dominant, and then the seam comes out, kind of pointed towards second or third slip. So that helps me get the swing away. I think that's important for a young player up and coming, and when they're learning their trade, is that they know that they've got a stop ball, basically, that they can deliver 9 times out of 10, and they know what it's going to do. Because that just helps the consistency, and it gives them, you know, the know-how of what the ball's doing and what they're doing with their action. And then as I got a bit older and I got a bit more confident, I learned. I don't really bowl an in-swinger as such, but in the last few years I've bowled a ball that nips back, which has got, you know, it's helped me a lot, because it's a good foil to my outswinger. So I hold that slightly differently. So I'll hold it a little bit like that and just try and run it in to a right-hander or away from a left-hander.
So you're just positioning the seam.
Just changing the seam slightly differently. Same release, so it's a very simple ball to learn, because it's the same. I don't change anything with the release or anything. I literally just change the seam position. If the batsman's watching me closely, maybe I'll just cover the ball so that they're not seeing. They can't quite see, you know, what I'm doing with it. But I try and keep it simple. I think with bowling, I think a lot of people, you know, they get frustrated if someone's bowling poorly or that, and I think they say, "Oh, why doesn't he just do this?" I think that the one thing that you've got to remember is bowling is a very difficult art to master, because there's so many moving parts, and it's a very unnatural movement for the body, and unless you groove it and practice it and it, you know, many times, you know, I've bowled. I'd dread to think how many balls I've actually bowled in my career, and yet I'll still bowl bad balls. There's no magic formula. It's just the more you practice and the more you bowl, the better you'll get. So I don't bowl as many bad balls as maybe I did when I was younger. But young bowlers coming up, they're still learning their action, and some days you'll find that you're running in and you feel like you're bowling left arm because your rhythm's all gone and your run-up's not feeling right, and sometimes the outfield's soft, and so you're stepping in as you're running in. There's so many factors that go into bowling. Bowling good or bad. So, you know, some days it will feel good and some days it won't. But as you get more, you know, as you bowl more overs and you get older, your action becomes more, you know, more fluent and it becomes more natural to you. I never had a great amount of pace, so I always had to learn how to move the ball and how to swing the ball and how to try and extract anything I could out of the pitch. I'm not overly tall. I'm just under 6 foot, so it wasn't like I had massive natural attributes. I've just always been able to run in and kind of put a ball on a good length and with a bit of movement either way. I think that's stood me in good stead. So I kind of worked to my strengths. I practiced and I bowled a lot of targets and studied batsmen, and I did all I could to try and help that. With the actual skills of bowling, there's nothing you can do more than practice. You have to. If you learn, and you're always learning, I'm still learning stuff now. I mean, with the way cricket's going with T20, and I'm not playing a massive amount of one-day cricket, you still got to practice slower balls, and as in my role as bowling coach, that's what I'm trying to as well. That's what I'm trying to, you know, impress upon all of our bowlers, is actually learning 2 or 3 slower balls to go with, you know, a stop ball and other balls that they might have. And I think the way the game is going, that you need to have those skills and you need to keep improving, because if you bowl a particular slow ball too much, batsmen are good enough nowadays that they'll get used to it and then they'll smack you out of the park. So you need to have 2 or 3 then maybe after a season or two you need to learn another one, because batsmen will get used to that. So there's constant change and there's constant need for improvement in bowlers nowadays. But I think the best piece of advice for a young bowler is sort of learn that stop ball, learn that ball that you can count on, your bread and butter, that's going to stand you in good stead for the rest of your career. Because if you've got that stop ball, on the days that maybe you're not feeling so great, you can always fall back on that stop ball, and generally it's going to be good enough that it might get you through those bad days, a little better than you possibly do. So it's, I think that would be the biggest thing for me. But you learn skills and you learn things, little subtleties with bowling, moving about in the crease. When the ball's swinging more, you might come a bit wider to change the angle, different seam positions, things like that. You learn that by bowling and in practice, and speaking to your teammates and speaking to the batsman at the other end, like, did that do anything? I tried something a little bit different there. You've got to be a sponge. You've got to absorb everything you can as a bowler and learn, observe what a batsman's doing. So there's more to it than just running up and letting go of the ball. There's so many variables that go into it. Watching how a batsman's feet move, how he's gripping the bat. If a guy's gripping it very low on the handle, generally they're going to be stronger, square of the wicket. Whereas if they're holding it a little bit higher, they're normally a good driver or hit the ball through the V a lot stronger. So little things like that give you an insight into a batsman's strength straight away. So there's a lot of things that actually go into the man, and then the actual mechanics of bowling. Like I said, it's a very unnatural movement for the body. Some days they're just a little bit off, and you just need a little bit of tinkering, and you go back to the nets and bowl a few, and then it feels good again. And like I said, I've bowled hundreds of thousands of balls in my career. I would have said, like, in practice and in games and things like that. And it's you never. Some days it still doesn't feel right. So there's no magic formula. So I think it's just practice and not losing faith in what you're doing.
Yes. Just with the advent of more limited overs cricket, and it seems to have much more importance now, 2020 in particular, do you think that bowlers are not, as young bowlers, they're not coming up with this stop ball to start with, that as while people are still learning the game, they're trying to develop too many variations, so you haven't got that stop ball to...
Well, I agree to that to some extent. That comes down to the coaches as well. As a coach, it would be wrong to just concentrate on one form of the game. So, for me, the pinnacle of a professional cricketer is to play Test cricket. It's still the pinnacle, in my opinion. Some players might not want to play international cricket. They might be happy making, and they can make millions out playing T20 cricket. I'll always give anyone I coach or anyone I speak to the chance to make their own decision, but I'll give them the tools, or try and give them the tools to be able to do whatever they want. So any bowler that I'm coaching, especially the young bowlers coming through, I will press upon them 100% to learn a stop ball, your bread and butter to learn, because that is at the end of the day, because there's a small minority that will go and play international cricket or go and play Test cricket, and generally you're going to have a good county career, you're going to need a stop ball. But then I've got to give them the tools, or help them gain the tools of learning slower balls and learning Yorkers and learning different variations, because if you haven't got those as well, the way the game's going, if you get picked for a one-day game and you haven't got any of those variations, then a stop ball nowadays is not good enough. You can't just bowl a stop ball, because you'll just get lined up, and the batsman will get on top of you. So I think it's about giving coaches, and senior players, giving those bowlers the tools to actually make their own decisions, but giving them, the tools to work with.
Yeah. Right. So we've talked about bowling. Obviously, part of bowling is you've got to have somebody at the other end to bowl at. So, who do you think are the best batsmen that you've bowled against? Perhaps your most prized wickets, and maybe perhaps, if it's not going to be libelous, are there any batsmen that when they come out to bat, you're shouting out to the skipper, "Give me the ball, Billy, I want to bowl at this one"?
There's a few batters. I'm not going to mention their name because there's a couple of them still playing, so I'm not going to go there. But there's definitely batters who I feel like I've got the rub over, and I'll speak to the captain and say, "Can I bowl, please?" And the captain knows anyway. Generally, before a game, we'll say, because my type of bowling might suit getting that, and conversely, there's some batters that that you won't suit as much. In terms of the best players I've bowled at, I always struggled bowling at Marcus Trescothick because I never felt like I could rush him, and he always sat quite deep to me. And my stop ball swinging into his pads, I always thought I was in with a chance of him missing it, but he never did. And he used to just punch me through mid wicket. And then if you did try and go across him, if you didn't quite get it right, he was very strong through the offside as well. So he was just a fantastic player, and he's still playing now, which is testament to how good he is. I remember actually him getting a double 100 on a very green wicket at Colchester against me, and then I thought, I can't bowl to this bloke. In terms of favourite wickets, I don't know really. I mean, I enjoyed getting Pujara out last year, just because I played with him and I knew how good a player he was. So that was a real nice one to get. Alistair Cook, obviously England's best ever. I got him out in my first year here at Derby. Whenever you get a player who's played Test cricket, you always kind of just tick it off, because it's a Test scalp's always nicer than just a county scalp. But I mean, I've just always loved taking wickets. So any wickets really, I celebrate like I've won the lottery anyway. But I mean, in terms of the way the game's going, there's definitely a lot more aggression nowadays, especially in 4-day cricket. I feel that batsmen come out and try and, which is always is making it more difficult to actually keep things tight and do a job. So I mean, Hale's got a double 100 against us last year, and that was a great innings, and we didn't bowl particularly well at him, but anything that was slightly offline, he smashed. So that's where the sort of kind of the 1-day form comes into 4-day cricket, and it's sort of crossing over a bit more now.
Yeah, so who? Well, it might be an awkward question for you to answer, but who do you think are perhaps the best batsmen in the Derbyshire side that you've played with?
Who over the course of my career with Derbyshire?
Well, perhaps we ought to just concentrate on players who are not playing anymore, so that you're not.
Oh no, I don't mind speaking about Mads comes to mind straight away with who I've played with at Derbyshire. Just because I feel like he's been very consistent in all forms, a fantastic player, but probably one of the best, if not the best player of spin I've played with. There's three that come to mind. There would be him, Andy Flower and Grant Flower, just guys who have all the shots to spinners, all the sweeps, use their feet well. In terms of guys I've played with previously, I think Martin Guptill was someone who was brilliant. The year actually, him and Usman Khawaja in 2011 and 2012, when they shared the overseas duties, they were two fantastic players who I really enjoyed playing with. Just both very different batsmen, but both came up. They were sort of big game players. They always came up trumps in, and especially Uzi, his 270s in the final game in 2012 were two of the best knocks under pressure I've seen. Guys who I'm playing with now, I feel like Billy's improved so much in all forms, and I think that we're really going to see the best out of him coming. He's coming into his prime, and I feel like he's going to have some really good seasons moving forward, because I feel like he's someone who's really improved and always he's always working on his game, and he's someone who I have a good relationship with. I'm always chatting to, and when I bowl to him in the nets, we're always thinking of different ways to bat against each other or get each other out, and it's something like that. So I would say those guys who I've played with there are brilliant. And then you've got, obviously, although we didn't see maybe the best of him, Shiv was whenever I bowled at him in the nets, you could see the time he had, and the way he practiced. Even when he how old he is now, he still practiced so hard, and just that's why he's one of the all-time greats, and why he's someone who's gone on and scored thousands and thousands of runs at Test level. just that little fraction, bit more time, and those guys who've played that level where they just have that little bit more time. It was just unfortunate with Shiv, we played on some, when he signed in 2013, we were playing on pretty much the outfield. Some of the wickets were very spicy, so they didn't help him too much there. But just bowling at him in the nets, you could tell that, you know, the time he had and how good a player he was. So those guys would come to mind, to be honest with me.
And one of your other jobs that you've had at Derbyshire is you often seem to be going in as night watchman. Is that something that you volunteer for? Is it something that you look forward to doing, or
no? I never looked for. I never volunteered for night watchman. I got asked early doors at Derby, and you can't say no. So I said yes, and then I got sort of lumbered with it for a few years. And although the last few years I've kind of got out of that job, if I'm asked again, then I would never say no. But it's I don't know any. Well, I don't know any bowler who enjoys going to face the new ball. So it's not something you know I've relished, but I've always been happy to do it whenever needed. And you know, obviously I've got my highest first class score doing it, but it's yeah, no bowler enjoys going in and facing the new ball after you've just slogged your guts out and bowled how many overs, and then you have to come off and strap them on straight away when all you really want to do is go and get a coffee or get your feet up. So it's not so. And then whenever I'm watching, it's always from say 6 overs out, but you only count 5 of those, because if you lose a wicket in the last over, you're not going in. So you're counting down those 30 balls, and whenever I've done night watchman, I'm always sitting there ticking off, like, you know, an imaginary board, like 30, 29, 28, and more often than not I've never had to go in, but it's always, it gets more nerve-wracking as you get near the end of those balls, and you're thinking like, come on, should we get through this little period? Yes, so that would be, it's not something I've always relished doing, but I was always happy to do it.
Didn't you open the batting to Cardiff?
Last year. Yeah, me and Tom Taylor opened the batting. Yes. That was
pink ball under floodlights.
That was
first time we've done it.
Yeah, well, that was actually something I'm not going to lie, I didn't agree with. I came up and we were asked would we do it, because there was only like 2 overs to go, and I kind of said, look, I don't agree with it, but I'll do it. And me and Tom Taylor went out there, opened batting, got out early the next morning. Well, next afternoon really, but it was a bit something a bit, you know, obviously I've never done before, it was something a bit crazy, but we went out there and opened the innings, and you know, I didn't mind in the end, because we obviously won the game, and Hamid got 5 for him and won us the game, so it was our first win for a while, so you know, I was happy to help out.
We're running out of time now. There's just a minute or so left. When you were in that situation as a bowler, do you look at that or the walking wicket?
Not
watchman comes in.
No, not because generally, if the guy's doing night watchman, he can hold a bat. So you've still got to work the guy out and get him out. And that's the one thing that people seem to forget, is that when a night watchman or a tail ender comes in, they try and strive for a wicket or try and get him out, and it sometimes works, but generally I'm of the opinion that what's good enough for the top order should be good enough for the bottom order, so you shouldn't try and do anything too much different than what you normally do. But yeah, I definitely don't see it as a walking wicket, because cricketers nowadays, the bowlers hit as many balls as the batters anyway. They're going off to have a dog stick in the nets and practicing their batting, because runs down the order is, you know, massively important. So yeah, definitely don't see it as a walking wicket.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Tony. We've come to the end of this tape. Very nice to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Enjoyed it. Thank you.